I have with me K.V. Kamath, the founding president of the New Development Bank, a multilateral bank that India set up along with Russia, Brazil, South Africa and China. Mr. Kamath, who has just completed his 5-year tenure based in Shanghai, possesses unique insights on a range of issues vital to India's development. He's an out-of-the-box thinker, India's most respected banker, a former chairman of Infosys, and a business leader whose understanding of China is second to none. Mr. Kamath breaks his silence after a long spell in this exclusive interview. Let's go straight to Mr. Kamath, whose term has come to an end only yesterday. Mr. Kamath, thank you for giving us this exclusive interview and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you.
So you've been working from home, I believe, keeping Shanghai hours out of Bombay?
Yes, for the last 5 months or so, that's been the routine, maintaining Shanghai hours from Mumbai.
So let me start with your last assignment. Yesterday you stepped down from New Development Bank. You were the first president of the bank. What would you count as your biggest achievements in the last 5 years?
I think making a very simple statement that countries of the South can come together, stand on their own feet, and spell out their own destinies. I think that's what the NDB has proven, because so far it was always working with the Western, the rich countries who had set up development banks, and the developing countries were, I would say, supported by these entities. But here you have a bank by and for countries of the South. Proving that concept, to me, was probably the biggest achievement of this bank. And in the process, we also established that it is possible to have a very high rating for countries which are developing. So we have a AA plus rating, that you could set up new, I would say, agendas, as it were, resorting to local currency financing, and of course, scaling up at speed. I think all these are something that the NDB could be very proud of.
How much loans have you been able to disburse in the last 5 years, and for what?
We have lent to all 5 members. All 5 members are borrowers. The loan book, in terms of the approvals, is around 18 billion at this moment. The disbursement book is around 4 billion. In a development bank, disbursement happens with a lag. So I think it will ramp up in the next 2 years. So every year, the growth has been, I would say, upwards of virtually 100% for the last 3 years. So capital has come in time, and the loan book has also grown up at a very robust pace.
What would you see as the big challenges for this bank going forward, given somewhat the India-China standoff in recent times?
Well, I think the bank actually looks at it itself as a fiduciary of the interests of the 5 members. So I think that will continue the same way as we go along. As long as there is a development need in our member countries, and the bank is now looking at inviting more members into its fold, I think the bank's purpose will be served. And this, I think, will drive this point that I made earlier, that countries of the South can stand on their own feet and write their own destinies. So this bank, I see, has a very bright future in the space it operates in.
Mr. Kamath, let me come back to India. You've been away for the last 5 years. Let me ask you a broader question and then I'll come to the specifics. How do you see the last 6 years of the Modi rule in India?
See, Rahul, I think we need to start at the very beginning. I'm talking of in an economic sense.
Yes.
In an economic context, if you look at 2014, we had a lot of pieces that were around, what we call the stranded assets. So we come from there to where we are today, to repair those assets, to put them into productive use, and then drive the economy along. I think the economy was coming along at a fair nick, and in sync with what is happening around the globe. In terms of hiccups that the global economy felt, we, in a way, were feeling those hiccups also. But the process of opening up, the process of engaging, the process of diversifying, the process of building scale was happening at a very rapid pace. And I think it is that pace that was built up. What gave the government the confidence to say that our aspiration is to be a $5 trillion economy in the next 5 years. This was last year. And clearly, the momentum was building up because we were doing things at scale and coming up to speed in various things that we had gone about building.
Interesting you talk about the 5 trillion economy. Post-COVID, there have been forecasters are predicting a somewhat bleak outlook for the Indian economy. IMF says that the economy will contract by 4.5%. Goldman Sachs puts the number at 5%. In fact, OECD is saying that it could decline by even more than 7%, if there could be a second wave of coronavirus. What do you make of all this?
I have a slightly contrarian view on this. And this is, again, I look back at my experience. Most of these numbers come out of models. And you know what happens in models? The robustness of the output is directly proportional to what goes in. So I think in terms of COVID, not only in India, in most countries around the world, it is very difficult to predict what is happening. So these numbers I will take with that caveat. Having said that, I think we need to look at a different set of numbers, I think, which the government is using, and I'm happy that they are using these numbers. These are basically numbers which are readily available, what we would call high-frequency data, for example, or soundings from various businesses. And if I look at that sum total, and I will explain that in a moment, I get a different picture. I get, at least in India, things seem to be coming around or will come around much quicker than what any of these agencies or institutions which estimated growth had forecast. And let me look at it and let me talk for a minute on this.
Sure.
If I look at 4 or 5 components of our economy and the steps taken by the government, and I think that's critical, the steps taken by the government are absolutely critical at the time they're taking, and the continuous steps that have been taken. And all this, I think, have in a very quiet way, done extreme good to the economy and the turnaround that I'm going to talk about. First, I will look at agriculture, because that to us is the core of India. That still is a large employer, though share of GDP has dropped over the years. Now, I find agriculture has come back very quickly. Rural India has been less affected by the challenges, the health challenges, and the connection to the market has transformed dramatically. Today, the housewife is a direct consumer from the field. She knows how to manipulate Google Pages or a spreadsheet, do an online transaction, pay for it online, and all this. All this, thanks to the preparation that was done over the last 3-4 years in having a digital economy in place, the Jan Dhan accounts in place, everybody having an account, the village also connected through robust internet platforms. So the farm space I am most optimistic about. The farm employment I am most optimistic about. And I think what our leaders talked about, manufacturing agro products going back to the taluk level, or I think is going to happen, given this drive that I see. So that space is going to come back at speed. The last number that I had, again, one of these high-frequency numbers, was that the sowing this season is about 90% higher than same time last year. So clearly, again, good news on the agro front. I then jump to the other side, which is large industry. The large industry, again, if I look at the construct, and all it needs is, today data is readily available. You can go in and deep dive into any of the database that we have, and we will find that the top Indian companies have been never so deleveraged as today. If I look at 2000, 2010, and today, these companies are by and large free of debt. So they will go through pain, but they'll come back very quickly. I do not think they will have balance sheet distress. They will not end up having broken balance sheets. And indeed, we find some of these companies now coming back to speed in terms of what they are producing. So I think large India is fine. Then you have knowledge India. That business has been revolutionary, because That business is clearly indicated that you can work not necessarily in an office and still derive value and provide value. So that business is going on extremely strong. The e-commerce industry, I think, has been the backbone of these last four troubled months in terms of our health challenges. So they have, provided extreme degree of support to the economy. Now come two or three pieces in the middle. The first was indeed the sad situation with regard to the migrants, which happened right at the beginning. But that again, the steps taken by the government in terms of providing them a helping hand, whether it is in terms of food, or Manrega, and so on, I think is a game transformer. Because if we now can provide, employment at the rural end, and of course, some employment will come at the urban end. I think this part of the economy will come back on speed. At this point in time, that is something that will require, I think, careful tending by the government. And I'm sure the government is doing it. Then I talk about the large mass of SME that we have and the pain and hurt that they are experienced and they are going through. And if you see the package that the government has offered, has put in place, that's where the largest piece of the package is. And I'm sure as that package gets rolled out, A, and B, these companies find a market for their products, whether as a part of a value chain to the larger companies or directly to market. I think these companies will come out of their pain. It leaves two or three areas which are experiencing pain, and we'll have to see how to help them. A, I think construction, real estate, particularly in urban areas. I think in rural areas it will come back pretty soon. The way infrastructure, because there may be a constraint on how much you can spend. So infrastructure could be in a degree of pain. And then, of course, financial services, because it takes the brunt of all this pain, on its shoulder, as it were. And we will need to see how we can provide a helping hand to this sector. But before I finish this sector, just one more point. This is part of our chat. Just one more point. That is, again, high frequency data, as comes out from watching, industry leaders speak. It's very interesting when leader after leader is talking about their own manufacturing activities coming back to 80%, 90% capacity utilization, that the supply chain and the logistics chain is coming back to speed and so on. And then you have other secondary data or tertiary data, whether it is the power generation, back to 90% or 95%, freight movement by rail, almost back to old levels, and so on. Several indicators which are coming back to normal are indicating that the rebound is faster than what most of us thought, including myself. And again, stray data or soundings with the bankers indicate that, for example, two-wheelers are back to 70 to 80% of what they were. Tractors are back to 80 to 90% of what they were. And mortgages, other than in urban areas, are also back to 70 to 80% of where they were. So what does this tell me? This tells me that, maybe those negative numbers that people were talking of, the contraction of various order of contraction, probably is not going to happen. We will probably have not so hard a landing. I will not venture to put a number because I think we are still watching and observing. But my own feel is that looking at all this data, that the landing will not be as hard as it is. Let me just say that. So, and the steps taken by the government, I think, are all that any government, which has carefully thought out, all aspects could have taken. So I salute the government for steps that it has taken and the impact that it will have in this, what I would call, not hard landing.
Mr. Kamath, that was a great perspective, and I think it would be music to the ears of some of our viewers. A very optimistic scenario that you are painting for us. Let me stick with one or two broader numbers and we'll come to the specifics again. Would the fiscal deficit worry you at all this year? There is a feeling, some economists feel that we should not worry so much about the fiscal but concentrate on reviving demand. How can this be done? What are your views?
Well, you remember, long back I used to say that I have the luxury of not being an economist. So that if I say something, nobody should misunderstand what I am saying. It is not coming from an economist perspective. I believe there's a new normal. And in this new normal, I think concepts such as deficits, I think we need to put them on hold. I think we need to work for the here and now. And the here and now calls for a new normal, new numbers, and new ways of looking at things. As long as you don't do anything which will permanently tear the fabric of economic growth, I think experiments will have to be done by government. And I'm sure our government also will look at the deficit in that context, because to do all that the government has set out to do, deficits will have to be played around with. And I, for one, will actually applaud this rather than criticize this, because it is very much needed to get this country back to an even keel in an economic context.
Would you say, and again, there is a lot of talk about this, would you say that we can expect a V-shaped recovery of sorts? The markets are also, in the last few weeks, they are on fire. We are talking about Nifty at 10,750. And if you look at the global picture, in the US in June, 4.8 million jobs have been added. In the Europe, the picture is also looking up. In India, GST collections are up. So would you say that there would be a V-shaped recovery of sorts?
I think let me just preface that by saying in India also, the job situation has improved because the factories are open. And I saw CMI numbers the other day that almost all the jobs we lost in the last April-May or April period were recovered in the May-June period.
Yes.
So I think once we look at more hard data, I think we can take a call on that part, the jobs part of it. But on the recovery front, my initial thoughts were that this is going to be a U with a very long base. And that would not have been very good for the country. As of today, having said what I said and observing what I am, what I've observed, I think it'll be a U, but with a very short base, not a very long base. And thereafter, as you go to the other side of the U, probably the U will be not a 90-degree U, but it will be almost like a V, accelerating faster. But we will know this for sure once a few more industries, talk about what is happening in their own sphere. I would be delighted if it turns out to be a shallow V, but as of now, to me, it looks like it will be a shallow U, not a long drawn-out U. And maybe next month, I could be pleasantly surprised if it ends up being some sort of a V. But as of now, a little bit of pain, and then we should be out of it.
Let me come to the recent reforms that the government has, announced even in the pandemic. So if you look at trade and cultural, in agricultural commodities have been freed up considerably. Coal mining, even railways have been opened up. How do you see this in the backdrop of a clarion call by the Prime Minister for an Atmanirbhar Bharat?
I think absolutely spot on. I think Atmanirbhar is the call of the day. Clearly, I felt that when Make in India was launched. I believe today the Indian entrepreneur has a new spirit in him to battle this challenge that they have. And I think it's the right time to look at a larger context of Atmanirbhar. My own suggestion in this to corporate India and in terms of policy would be to see what are the challenges that really corporate India faces in terms of executing on Atmanirbhar. I think we should now look at, this is executable for sure. What are the challenges that you face in executing? And my own view is, in a historical context, if I look at 10, 15 years back, maybe 15 years back is a good call. If you were to execute Atmanirbhar, you had a challenge because you didn't have the scale. You had industry which was coming out of the problems of the 90s, try to gear up for a new scale, as it were, new quality connotation, new cost connotations and so on, new competitiveness. All that was gained, but still we did not become truly Atmanirbhar in a wider context that the Prime Minister indicated. Now, think what we need to really look at it is what are those constituents or support that we would need to provide corporate India and the system, the entire system, to make this work. And repeatedly, again, sitting here at home, listening to various people talk in a very wise manner, I think it is the small things. Nothing big needs to be done. It is making, in one phrase, if I were to put it, ease of doing business. Can we revisit this whole platform of ease of doing business in a soft sense, not the hard sense, not the sense where you have to set up new capacities or you have to learn how to do business, how you become competitive and so on, but your day-to-day operations and how you get them to be seamless. I think this, I'm sure the government will do. I'm sure industry leaders will work with the government on this front. And that will truly be a big step towards Atmanirbhar. That's my view sitting at home, not having my hands into the business. But I can well feel what business is trying to tell and what they're trying to say.
A large part of this Atmanirbhar Bharat also is about easing the credit flow to MSMEs, something that you touched upon. How do you think this will play out?
I think there are three components to this in terms of credit. I think one is the cost of credit, the second is the flow of credit, and the third is making sure that the momentum of credit or the velocity of money is maintained. I think all three have to be in sync. By lending the large, I would say, package in terms of guarantee support, honestly, the government has done its bit. We now need to make sure that the banks truly are able to lend this out. And again, if I look at it, this is government guaranteed money. So can the banks help in terms of providing it to business at an even more affordable rate? Because at the bottom, this is government guaranteed credit. Yes, you must recover your cost of operations and have a reasonable spread. But virtually your risk is coming down to a very, very marginal. You must provide some risk, but at the base, this is government money that the government is standing at your back, as it were. So low-cost credit, quick disbursement of credit, and making sure that the chain of credit flow goes unimpaired and unhindered, I think is what business and the banks will have to work towards.
So on one hand, we are talking about a self-reliant India. On the other, we talk about opening up the economy. Some critics argue that this self-reliance could also lead to an amount of some kind of isolationism, in the Indian economy when it comes to trade with other countries. How do you react to this?
Not at all. I don't think that is true at all. I think from several counts. I think indeed, if I look at markets, India is a very large market. And as we head towards a 5 trillion economy, and I'm clear this country is going to head towards a 5 trillion economy. As it heads towards the 5 trillion economy, the domestic market is going to get bigger and bigger, which means domestic companies will have a large space to operate in. Now, in terms of how they balance domestic production and domestic supply with access to global markets is something that they will have to carefully work on. If the feeling is that they have taken it slightly easy, I'm not saying they have, this is in essence they have to do, they will then have to see whether this particular item could be indigenized rather than relied on as an import item always. I think this is the first step that we need to do. And I'm again hearing on news shows that talk about APIs, that talk about components for certain manufacturing industries and so on. So I think a relook will be taken. But I think Atmanirbhar to me also means that at the end of the day, with all these things, your own strength and leveraging global strength, how do you look at the global market? And how do you stand as a player in the global market? Because that accelerates your path to the 5 trillion economy. Of course, there are several other drivers for the 5 trillion economy, but in the context of Atmanirbhar Bharat, I think that accelerates your path, a larger marketplace. See, other parts of Atmanirbhar, as I can see, clearly are getting your infrastructure in place. Again, rapid progress has been made. but we could look at same thing that we probably could do in the manufacturing side. What are the soft issues that are a challenge on the infrastructure front? How do we address them? I think this is something that we could do apart from rolling out infrastructure. I see one challenge, you talked about deficit and funding. I think one challenge that we will hear increasingly in the next 1 year is how do we meet our infrastructure aspirations given the challenges that we will have on the fiscal front? This is something that the government will need to think through. And as I said, maybe it's time for a new normal, not look at old concepts of deficit financing and so on, as long as we are sure that we can keep the fabric intact. So there are, I would think, many aspects to Atmanirbhar Bharat. India is a land of opportunity. So there is going to be no shortage of things to do, which is unlike several other countries. They are, in a way, searching for what is it that you can do to drive growth. We don't have to do that. We have unfinished agendas in almost all areas that we look at, whether it is providing housing to our masses, whether it is providing robust infrastructure, whether it is keeping up the infrastructure chain, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is food products. I think we have enough to do to grow at rapid rates. By rapid rates, I would think the table stakes are double-digit growth for a very long period of time. By a very long period of time, I mean upwards of 15 years, 10 to 15 years for a minimum, but upwards of 15 years. Because that's what you will need to truly transform this country.
So what I hear is you saying that let's not worry so much about the fiscal deficit at the moment and look at creating demand. You touched upon these sectors. How do we divide these sectors? Real estate has been a problem for the past many years now. Construction is not picking up, construction activity. So how do we do all this?
I think that's one sector which needs probably very close attention. I think industry leaders are giving solutions on this front. I would think that the challenge has to be simplified. The challenge has to be broken up into urban challenge and a challenge outside urban areas. Once you do that, I think the challenge outside urban areas is easy. Let us concentrate on that and quickly fix that, because that is fixable very easily. I think as far as the urban challenge is concerned, I think people who are the experts in this business should come together. I've heard some of the leaders talk about a one-time correction in terms of this marketplace. I have not applied my mind to this, but clearly this is an important part of the economy, and we will need to address this in due course. But to me, there are a lot of other things that can do, which itself could drive momentum, and this problem then could become a smaller problem than what it appears to be today.
I hear you say that, in this new normal, old economic theories don't apply. I come back to the fiscal deficit question. Do you think that it is time to throw the fiscal caution to the wind somewhat, and really concentrate on reviving demand?
I will not use that phrase. Concentrate on revival, yes. Estimate as to what the economic fabric can bear, and go to that extent. And I think we will find, a lot of times we are looking at this number from the point of view, what is X going to say? What is Y going to say about this? And this could be, what is the rating agency going to say? What is, the global lenders, what are they going to say, and so on. I think to me, these are all secondary. At this critical time, we need to, make an assessment ourselves. What is it that we can bear? And based on that, take a call.
India today is the third largest number of COVID cases today in the world, after United States and Brazil. You've been friend, philosopher, and guide to many industry leaders in India. You must be talking to them. What is the sense you get from them today regarding COVID and the road ahead? How are they dealing and coping with this?
It's interesting. And again, I'm only talking. If I hear them speak, they all want to get along with business. And I think in that context, the steps taken by the government are appropriate, because otherwise we would have locked in. We would have caused misery to a whole lot of people, and then we would have had a challenge. I think the way that the country is addressing this. And this probably state by state, city by city, the strategies may be slightly different. But I think we are coming to a situation where we're saying, we should concentrate on recovery. The challenge of getting the illness is probably, the illness is going to happen. How do you manage the recovery process? I think that's the strategy that state governments are looking at, cities are looking at. That's probably the right way to do it. And as far as business is concerned, given this constraint, business is trying to say how they could operate given this constraint in a manner that doesn't exacerbate the situation, contains the situation, but you keep the economic momentum going. I think this is going to be a very careful balance. Each country will have to learn, and I think the learnings are coming in virtually daily. And I think from our country's point of view, one thought that I have is that these learnings should be shared, and these learnings should be standardized, because I see now in some states there is a second wave, but I'm equally saying that the challenges that they're facing, those cities, say a Mumbai or a Maharashtra or a Delhi, had gone through. And if what a response a Maharashtra or a Mumbai had or a Delhi had, if these learnings could be taken to those states where the challenges are just not erupting, I think we will be all better off. But I'm sure it will happen, and I think this is the way we will need to combat the disease, because the disease is going to be with us for quite some time. So we will need to take care, but at the same time keep momentum going.
Mr. Kamath, let me turn to the banking sector. Clearly the banking sector was struggling under the burden of bad loans even before COVID. Do you feel that after this, that could exacerbate, that problem could become worse? Does it worry you at all?
Yeah, if I look at pre-COVID, I will only amend what you said very slightly. I think the banking sector was, having a problem, which was serious. But I think the banking sector, with all the efforts, the government, the capital that was injected and so on, was coming out of the problem. It needed a little more handholding, but it was coming out of the challenges. Clearly, the answer to your question is yes, there will be a challenge. And the sectors where we will have a challenge are also known. So what is the key response? The key response, I think, are on 3 levels. I learned this lesson very long back in my previous stint as a development banker, not the current stint, that only way a bank can survive is by growing. You do not allow a bank to grow, the bank is going to, the problem of NPAs is going to be unmanageable. So you will have to grow your way apart from corrections in terms of provisioning and capital injections and so on. The bank will have to grow its way out of NPAs. So critically, growth, which we talked about in the earlier part, is going to be a critical part, is going to be an important part of the banks coming out of this crisis. So I think with the steps that we've taken, that growth will happen. Whether it is in the corporate India, whether it is in rural India, or whether it is in retail India, I think we need to maintain the momentum. The second is, I think at this point in time, low interest rates. Low interest rates are going to be critical for survival of banks. And I'll explain why. Take a very simple scenario. If interest rates are 12%, your NPA doubles in 6 years. It doubles in 6 years, and there is no chance at all of that institution surviving if an NPA is going to double in 6 years without massive capital injection, and that capital doesn't probably exist today. So you need to get down interest rates so that you buy time for the banks to heal on their own. So you turn the thing around. The bank lends at 6%. You have 12 years for the NPA to double. And clearly, you will have at least 1, if not 2, economic cycles in that period, which will, raise all boats, and the banks will be able to come back to health. Yes, capital injection will be required, but the order of capital injection will be significantly lower than what it is if you run a high interest rate regime. So I think banks will need to look at how they work with the government, with the regulator, to ensure that a low interest rate climate endures. Having said that, interest rates have started dropping. I would guess that interest rates need to drop even further if the banks need to be have to come around without too much pain. Otherwise, they will probably come around, but extreme pain and money being provided by various stakeholders, which is going to be a challenge. That's the second point. The third point is, I would think some steps were taken. A moratorium was announced by the Reserve Bank. Very welcome. I think there was also an extension of moratorium. Very welcome. And I'm more heartened when I see bankers come out and say, or some NBFCs come out and say that X% of my customers took the moratorium. That was 2 months back, but today, many of them have said that we will pay in time. Extremely good news. So I would think that, I hope that continues. But having said that, if there are sectors, if there are who genuinely have a problem, I would think that it is right time that policymakers could consider, again, no prescriptions, could consider a moratoria of a longer nature, maybe a one-time. I heard other banking leaders talk about it, and I would stand with them to say that that's probably the need of the day, and probably the lowest cost way in which you will put the banking system back on its feet. Low interest rates, one-time moratoria, and provide them the market to grow and encourage them to grow. I think this puts back banking on its feet quickest. This is the lesson that I learned going back almost 30 years into my career or more. And I think it stands true even today. And this is something that we could consider.
What do you make of the way in which Yes Bank was rescued?
Well, I have not applied my mind too much to that. All I can say is that the bank is on its feet, its shareholders are taken care of, and we will then have to do the numbers as to the money that was put in. Was it put to good use? I think in a few months' time we will have a final answer. But as of the moment, I think it served the purpose.
Mr. Kamath, a related question. NBFCs are also somewhat of a fragile lot. Do you think that there could be a repeat of something like a DHFL? There are a lot of stressed companies out there.
See, I want to separate the challenges that some of them face. Most of them, I think, are in the business of lending and lending in an appropriate way. If they have challenges, those challenges have come up because of circumstances. To that extent, whatever I said about the banks would apply to these companies also. If there are entities which did things that they ought not to have done, I think they need to be looked at differently. And we should not paint all NBFCs or all banks with the same brush. And equally, companies which might not have done things appropriate need to be dealt with in a separate manner. Because I think the mass of the large mass of the financial sector, I think, is doing business in an appropriate way and should be encouraged to do it that way.
Mr. Kamath, let's turn to China for a moment. Heartening news today that there is some de-escalation happening between the two countries. You've spent the last 5 years in China. What are your impressions of the country, its rulers, and the people?
Well, I will basically talk about the economy and then put some things in context. The economy, see, whatever one says in terms of the process of development, the economic growth, it is visible. So you cannot take a call and say that the economic growth has not happened. You pick any city, large or small. Today, it is clean, it is organized. Clearly, there have been efforts at cutting pollution, getting the environment right, and getting process and system to work. I think that is a given. I think in the context of challenges that our country and China has faced, I would leave it to our government. I think the government has taken appropriate steps, and I'm sure they will do whatever is appropriate in the interest of our country, because every country's interest is what is paramount to leadership. And that's exactly what I see our leaders doing. And I'm sure things will come to a normal soon.
Some people say that, this recent stress on Atmanirbhar, self-reliant India is quote speak for reducing dependence on China. You know, we've seen a banning of 59 apps. We are looking at imports from China. They're under close scrutiny and so on. What do you have to say about this?
See, I would look at, the indigenization process separate from the Atmanirbhar process. I think what we are talking here is a narrower indigenization process, which has to happen, and it has to happen with all our partners. Wherever we are getting stuff from, we will need to see, should we not be in a competitive way, in a quality conscious way, cost competitiveness and quality competitiveness and be making this ourselves. I think every Indian company needs to look at this. And that could be done in partnership with whoever can provide you the knowledge if necessary to that's separate. I think Atmanirbhar is a much bigger concept. It is the ability to stand on your own feet, look after yourself, and look beyond in terms of not only your needs, all your needs, as the Prime Minister so eloquently articulated. So I would disconnect these two. There is an opportunity to indigenize, let's do that. There's a bigger opportunity at being Atmanirbhar, let us do that.
Are we in a position to decouple from China today?
Indian industry is probably the best place to answer that. If I look at the imbalance in trade, it's going to be, it probably cannot be an immediate, because you'll have to be careful to see who does this hurt more in the immediate sense.
Do you see India as an alternate manufacturing location to China for global companies?
I would look at it the following way. India as a global manufacturing base, period, as an alternative to any country. I think some of the things that I said earlier, particularly getting the soft issues, the ability to do business at ease, I think is the key to succeed on this front. And if you get that right, our industry can be a world beater.
Mr. Kamath, one last question, and all my colleagues have pestered me to ask you this. You've been, you've not been in India for the last 5 years, but you've been ever so often in the news, especially amongst us journalists, about a possibility of taking up a big assignment with the Indian government. Any feelers?
Absolutely no. My own view is that, twice earlier I said that I need time. I'm getting on, as it were, and I need time to be with family. I need time to be with my grandkids. And every time I say this, and a few years pass, they get bigger, I get older.
The last time you said this, you were packed up for 5 years to Shanghai.
Yes, so I'm saying that again, and I told my friends who were talking about now what, I said, as of yesterday evening, let me put up my feet and relax. But, my thoughts are always with the country. And when somebody like you talks to me, I get energized to share maybe my 40 years plus of, well, it's now getting to be 50 years of experience. So that's what I will contribute. Share my experience, put my thoughts on the table, and wish the country great success. I think we are set for, we are destined for great things.
Mr. Kamath, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to your new innings. And thank you for your time and the first exclusive interview after your assignment to CNBC TV 18. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you.